All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. This is going to be our first ever real kind of ride review video of some motorcycles here. We're going to start out today with a Royal Enfield Interceptor. This is a 2021 model, and I believe this color is called Ravishing Red. A little bit of background real quick. I come from basically vintage motorcycles, vintage Hondas mainly. So I've had CL 350s, I've had CB 350s, 400Fs. I've had a Super Hawk 305, numerous smaller bikes, an S1 or what was it, SL 100. Heck, I had an original Honda Monkey 1971 that was from actually from Japan. Interceptors, from the 80s, 86 Interceptor, VFR 750s, 700s, Super Magna, a lot of Honda stuff. Had a couple two-stroke Yamis, but never really was a big British bike guy. The original Royal Enfields or the original, Triumphs and stuff like that. They were neat. I had a soft spot for them, but it was kind of a unique thing that I never really did much with. So I have owned a Royal Enfield, a recent one. I had a 2015. That was a Bullet 500 Classic that had a sidecar on it. And it was a really neat, fun bike. I only had it for a summer. And, now the dealership that I work at, we sell Royal Enfield. And I couldn't actually be happier. So let's show you this bike here. This one here's a little special. 2021 Interceptor 650. This has an SNS 2into1. This is the race-only pipe. And for me, it's a little loud. Riding the bike, it isn't so bad, but it is a little loud. We did take the baffle out, which of course helps with the sound, but it also helps with the volume. But it also has the air intake that SNS provides, a high-flow air intake. So it's actually two part numbers to do that air intake. Total price to do this exhaust system and air intake is under $1,000. I think it's right around $950, $940 to do the exhaust and the air intake system. And honestly, so we have two other Royal Enfields in the shop that have slip-ons on them. One of them has the SNS slip-ons, and another one has a set of Engos, rather inexpensive exhaust in the Emgo side of it. But those bikes add volume, but they probably really don't add any performance. This one here, I always think there's that illusion of volume that adds performance, but I do think that you actually are getting a little bit of performance with just doing those two things. We didn't tune it. We didn't do anything else other than we threw the air intake on it, which the factory air intake, you are making it far less restrictive with this SNS system. The factory one, you're taking out a big piece of plastic. You are making it far more open. And then that's a 2into1 exhaust system. A 2into1 system is going to be better than a separate 2into2 system any day of the week, no matter what. So I don't know what the gains are, but I will say that it does definitely feel like you are gaining something here. The bike revs faster, and it does seem to pull a little harder. So we'll do a little ride in this just to kind of, not that you can feel it or anything, but kind of give you an idea what the experience is all about. But these bikes are really fun. They got, I don't know, they're just a fun bike. They have enough power, and they have that vintage feel without having the vintage issues. So this guy here, they're 47 horsepower is what they are rated at from the factory. And that is enough for most people to have fun with, especially if you're going for a vintage bike. You're probably going for it more for the aesthetics. And, you still want something comfortable. You still want a pleasurable experience. But it has enough power to give you that pleasurable experience with a cool exhaust system on it. It has the sound. This engine sounds really good. And actually, I think this 2into1, even though I personally am not a huge fan of the look, I want something more nostalgic. But it does sound really good. It does sound really good. Performance-wise, yeah, it's not an MT-07 or anything like that. It's not one of the bigger Triumphs or anything. But it is great, really, for what you're getting and what you're paying for. I mean, these bikes are really inexpensive. So, and they have a good look, and you can still fool people into thinking that you have a vintage motorcycle. That was one thing that my Bullet was good at with the sidecar. People thought that thing was from the 50s. It fooled almost everybody. So these ones aren't quite as true, but they're still pretty darn true to the 70s era style. And I don't know, I really enjoy it. I really would like to have one of these personally in my stable. So this guy here, brand new bike, you know, analog gauges, very simple. Very simple. This guy only has 7.4 miles on it. Let's start her up and let's see, let you hear what this guy sounds like on this camera here. I'm filming this with an iPhone 11, so hopefully the mic is good enough. Sounds pretty good. Definitely has hip performance sound for it. Yeah, really cool stuff. So let's hop on the bike and go for a quick little ride and show you what riding it's all about. Alright, so it's March in Wisconsin, late March, but normally you're not doing this in March on a bike. Roads are still sand in quite a few spots. I seen they had street sweepers out. We did get a little bit of rain last night. We're supposed to get quite a bit more tonight, but it's 60 some degrees today, low 60s, so it's a great day to do this. Some of those corners you don't know what you're coming into, but we're going to take a left here and open her up and see how this guy accelerates up to, I don't know, let's say 75, 80. So we'll get the bike straightened out and let her eat. Look at that Mitsubishi get in front of us a little ways, and we'll try this again. That thing hits rev limiter about 500 RPM faster than the red line is on the tack. So it kind of came up and surprised me when I was bouncing off that thing in first gear. But it accelerates all right, but it definitely isn't, you know, nothing to write home about. But it has good performance, and for a vintage style bike, you know, that you're not looking to just be a racer, comfortable seating position. This guy straightened out and we'll give her again. We're going up a slight uphill towards the end, so see if we can. real quick. It's the most miles I put on one of these in a sitting. And I don't know if what it is with today, but when I got back, my hands are pretty numb. Now, that being said, I have wrist issues. I have carpal tunnel, and my throttle hand was getting a little sore. So I don't know if it could be just me. The Indian back behind it is what I rode here. Now I have cruise control. I use that quite often. I rest my hands. But one thing, I love the Continental GTs. I love the way they look. However, I wouldn't be able to handle one of them because the extra wrist pressure that I'd have. And this bike here, the seating position on it, you're more upright, it is more comfortable, but for some reason it's still, my hands are still numb and tingly, and I only put on 10 miles in the loop that I did from the last time I recorded the walk around with the bike. So, but again, I wouldn't take that into too much account. I have issues with my hands, and there's very few bikes that don't do that to me. Luckily for me, I have cruise control on this, so it's easy for me to shake it off. Another thing on this guy, for me personally, the exhaust is a little too loud. That's the helmet I was wearing, just a little bit well. And I have Vance and Hine turn downs on this guy, and stage 2 cams and stuff. It's a relatively louder bike, but this I think is louder and a little more snappy loud. So for me, I would want to have an exhaust that's not quite as loud for riding around. It has a really cool tone. I just wish the volume was a little bit lower. Again, that's my preference. Power wise, again, if for someone that's looking at a bike like this, you're probably not looking for a big crazy performance bike, but if you are, SNS can go further with it, and they also have camshaft options for you, and they do have an 865 big bore kit. And I've seen dyno numbers with 2into1 system and some setups, they're in the mid 70s for horsepower. So and that's at the wheel, and something like that would be a heck of an improvement. From what I've read and what I've seen, these guys dyno in the low 40s at the wheel, which is pretty good considering they're rated at like 45 or 47 horsepower. So that's pretty good. And you add another 30 horsepower on top of that, I mean, you're really going to have something that's impressive. So overall, a very fun bike. It feels really good, and they come with a hell of a warranty. So Royal Enfield Interceptor 650, very cool motorcycle. You got questions or anything, please leave below in the comments. I do work here at Zocco Sports Center, so I can help you with other things as well. But this channel, these reviews, they're going to be my personal opinion. Maybe the dealership will benefit from it too. Hopefully they will, but I'm going to be honest with you. And you got questions, let me know. But otherwise, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you in another one.